Hey, what's up? This is Moo. I post as GM Moo on the Roll20 forums where I GM a couple of campaigns and also troll a lot. And today I wanted to make a little instructional video showing how to use Maptool, which is another virtual tabletop package, to make decent looking maps for your Roll20 campaign, even if you're terrible at drawing like I am. I'm going to assume that if you're watching this video, you know what Roll20 is. If you don't know, it is a virtual tabletop website that allows you to run role-playing pen and paper style campaigns using a web interface instead of a tabletop. Now, if you don't know what Maptool is a Java-based local installation virtual tabletop as well, but it also includes some useful tools for drawing maps and modifying tokens and doing a bunch of other things. It's much more heavily scripted and extremely powerful in terms of automation, but for ease of use and accessibility, I have switched to Roll20 for actually running my games. However, I still use Maptool to draw a lot of maps if I can't find something that meets my needs just by doing a Roll20 search in the graphics library. Now, I know how to use Photoshop and I know how to use GIMP, and I even know how to use CAD programs. So the problem is, I am terrible at drawing. And it's for this reason that I use Maptool. The first step is we're going to download a copy of Maptool, and you do that at this site up here, rptools.net. Just jump over to the download section right here, click on Maptool, and grab this, whatever the latest version is. In this case, it's Maptool version 1.3.b89. Now, Maptool doesn't have a Windows installer, so you just take all these files and extract them to whatever directory you want. So here we have a directory where I've installed this new version of Maptools. This is actually an additional installation, which is why you see the 2 up here, but it doesn't really matter. Just sit them in a folder somewhere, it's fine. Over here, we have a launcher tool. You don't want to launch from this if you are running Java 7. You can launch it from the executable jar file and it'll launch just fine, but you'll be constrained on how much memory you have. Now these 3, launch Maptool 1G memory, 256 meg memory, and 512 meg memory, these are command line batch files that attempt to load Maptool with the desired amount of memory allocated to the Java stack. The problem is that these files are designed for Java 6 and they use wildcards which Java 7 does not understand. So if you try to launch these, it'll just open a window really quickly and then go away and nothing will happen. So here's how you fix it. Here I've opened up launch maptool-1g-memory.bat in a notepad file, and here's what the problem is. If you look up here, this is a variable defining the version number, 1.3.b89, and down here is the Java launching command with the maximum stack, the minimum stack, and here they insert the version. Now, 2 problems you will run into. In Java 7, this doesn't point to the correct Java installation anymore, and it no longer recognizes this variable. So first of all, you're going to search your computer and find your version of java.w.exe in whatever folder you have. It's probably going to be in a Java 7 subdirectory. And you're going to get the exact path name of your Maptool jar file, which should be pretty easy because you just installed it. So let's find those, and then we'll put them in quotes in this line and remove this variable because it no longer matters. So first things first, let's just get rid of this. You don't need it. Second thing, I found out that my Java w.exe is in C, program files x86, Java JRE7 bin. Now that's the default installation on my Windows 7 install. It could be somewhere else in yours, but it's likely to be similar. So let's highlight this business that we're going to get rid of, and we'll just paste in the address as we copied it from Windows Explorer. And there it is. I'll turn on word wrap here so we can actually read it. Now I'm going to put quotes around it so the batch file can actually execute this thing. And now we simply go to the Explorer window where we've installed Maptool, and we copy that address, and we're going to overwrite this business, paste in the address. I've installed on my H drive, quotes around it, and then we're going to save it as some other file. So now we're back in the Maptool directory, and here we have launch Maptool 1G memory-mod.bat, which is the way that I save my modified batch file. So let's launch it and see what happens. Yep, everything's just fine. Let's talk about the resources. The resources are things like the textures that you use, like for instance this grass, buildings, tokens, trees, whatever you want. When you first get Maptool, you'll only have the default resource library, and that includes, some cards, some dice, not really too useful. The health bars, this is more useful if you're going to actually use Maptool as a playing system. This is a complete map that they included, markers, overlays, but the section that you're going to use the most really is textures. And textures includes grass, which you can see out here. There's ocean, there's another water graphic, there's a star field if you want to make a map in space for, let's say you're playing Traveler and doing tactical combat. Some cobblestone sand. I mean, they're really nice textures. But this isn't very much, so you're going to want to add more stuff to your resource library. Now in this installation, I already have a couple of local directories where I've put a bunch of textures and resources that I have grabbed off of sites like Dungeony or that I've made myself. And the way that you do that, you go to File, Add Resource to Library, and you get this window. The first thing that you see here is the local directory. And from here you can define your path or search for it on your computer, find the directory that you put your resources in, and it will automatically add it to this resource library. This is a URL method where if you have a site where you're hosting graphics and textures, you can simply add that. I don't use this, so I can't really say much about it. This is really the gem of Maptool's resources. Click on this, and you get access to the library of tokens and textures created by Maptool users and developers, and there are some really nice ones here. You can search through them if you want. Unfortunately, the web interface to RPTool's image library has been broken for some time, and I don't see a fix for it, so what I'd say is the first time you launch Maptool, just do this and install all of them. And it's going to take some time. You'll get a bunch of pop-up windows with license agreements for the various packs. That's fine. Some of them may not download because they're not available anymore. That's fine too. But just let this run for a while and click through a bunch of windows. Now once you've installed all these packs, you can look through them in your resource library, and this tree is going to get pretty full. But you'll be able to look through directories and subdirectories of other people's submissions, find textures that you like, find buildings that you like, any kind of overlay that you could possibly want will probably be in here, and if it's not, you can just download it and then add it to a local directory in the window that I showed you before. So now we've downloaded all of our packs. Some of them may still pop up every once in a while. They take a while to access, but wow, look at all of this. There are geomorphs, specialty lava tiles, there's some tokens, tons of trees, a bunch of things for use in taverns. There's too many for me to describe here or even to go through. So just explore them on your own, find the ones that you like, and let's create a quick map. So let's make some assumptions regarding this map that we're making. The first is that it's going to be for GURPS, so it'll be hex-based, 1 unit per hex. The second, that we're going to be outside, and the map is going to be for a scene where the characters will be fighting for control of a bridge or river crossing. So this means there's going to be a river heading roughly north to south, maybe winding a little bit. There are going to be some trees on either side. And there's going to be a road which crosses east to west and goes over a fordable spot in the river. The fordable spot in this scenario is going to have a bridge on it. I may or may not actually put a bridge here, because one of the things about designing your base maps is that sometimes you want to keep them as reusable as possible. So if a scene comes up later on where maybe the river is going the other way, you can just go to that map, remove all your tokens and drawn items, and flip it 90 degrees, and bingo, new map area. The first thing we'll do is we're going to get an idea of the scale. So we're going to show the grid, and those are squares. That's for D&D and such. I'm not going to use that. Of course, all these things are modifiable if you are going to use it for D&D or another square system. So let's go to map, edit map. We're going to change this. You can use either vertical or horizontal hexes. These values don't really matter that much. Just leave them as they are. And here in the background, by the way, if you are doing something that's not on grass, you go to the background, choose your texture, and you can choose any one of these textures that you want. As I said before, Starfield, if you're doing a space combat map, choose a texture from another pack. It doesn't really matter. But for now, we're going to stick with the grass. So here we go, and like I said, it's GURPS, so it's 1 year. Let's zoom out a little bit. The thing about Maptool is that you can make maps literally any size you want. You can get to absolutely ridiculous scales. We're not going to do that here, although my maps do tend to run a little bit large. About this big or so, maybe a little bit bigger. Let's draw ourselves a river. For the water texture, we're just going to use this one. That's fine. You can, if you want, have another texture for the shoreline interaction. Sometimes like cracked mud. It's fine, let's go with that. Here you can set, this is the opacity of the layer. This is the thickness of that cracked mud border. Well, I'll just leave those at default. If you're used to Roll20, you'll notice that there is an extra layer here. This is the token layer, which is the same as it is in Roll20. There's the hidden layer, which is the same as the GM layer on Roll20. The background is the map layer. And object. Now, object is kind of like a sub-token layer, and if you're designing a very detailed map with a lot of things that you want to keep behind tokens, object is the one that you want. Let's stick with background for right now. Let's use this first to draw a river, which is the defining characteristic of this map. Now, because of previous campaign interactions, I've already stated that the river that they have scouted is about 10 yards across. That means it's going to be about here, maybe to about here. And it's going to run down the center of the map. This map is going to be a little bit larger, and as we zoom out in Maptool, I'm going to lose sight of these hexes. So let's draw the initial over here, and then we'll take a look and see if we need to extend it at all. So, yeah, that's about right. So now I'm just going to draw sort of a little wavery river down here. It'll be wider at points and narrow at other points. That's fine. That's exactly how I want it. And I release the mouse, and there we go. There's some kind of narrower points here. That's a little bit too narrow. It's pretty close, but I want to fill that in. So let's change this. Hit the cancel button, and that means that there's no border. It's going to look a little bit strange, but I don't want the mud to be sitting out in the middle of the river like that. That's our river at kind of large scale. A little bit of oddness up here. Let's just fill that in. And only you can judge whether or not this map is going to be large enough for your fights. Let's assume that it is, just to keep things a little bit simple. Now we know that there's going to be a road that's going to move roughly in this direction. Let's assume that here's the point where they have this bridge that they have to take control of. So let's change our textures again. I'm going to think of it. I should have done this first, but I'm just not that smart. Dried grass looks okay for a road. I'll just go ahead and use that. Let's say that that's the bridge. We'll just keep running right past it. And that looks about right. Now let's go back. Like so. Alright. That looks about right. Now, because I was dumb and I drew the road after the river, I'm going to have to go back now and redraw the river. Just draw this over here. Keep that even. And that is where our bridge is going to be. That's fine. So now I have a basic idea of the defining characteristics of the terrain. Let's draw some trees. I've already said that there are going to be some trees in the area. So now let's jump over here to this menu. We'll go to the object layer. And let's take a look what kind of trees we have. There are a lot of trees in these packs. Different colors, different sizes, different styles, whether or not it's winter. I try to pick ones that are seasonally appropriate for the time of the campaign if you pay attention to that stuff, and ones that contrast well enough with the background so that they're not too confusing. So let's see what we get here. Let me zoom in on a section here. Let's pick a tree that seems right. I know that it's kind of late summer, early autumn, which gives me a good selection of trees to deal with. Start up here. Yeah, this one looks pretty nice. Let's drop one of those in there. This pops down. It's pretty big for its size, so I'm going to resize it down to a size that I think is more manageable. And now I have a tree. I'm going to grab this tree, Control-C copy, and now I'm just going to move my mouse around like so. Drop in a few extra copies. Let's find another tree. That one looks pretty good. Drop it over here, resize, and do the same thing. If I want another tree, you can just keep doing this as long as you want. The one thing I'll say is be careful of how many trees you put down. It can get easy to get carried away until you've basically got no space for anyone to walk. And I'll show you why that's important in a second. But let's find another tree that looks reasonable. Those are a little too wispy for my tastes. Some of these look pretty good. Let's take this one. This one looks like it's contrasting enough. We'll just go with 3 tree types here. Yeah, that's fine. By the way, if you zoom in on these trees, you can see that they really, you can tell the pixelation when you're up close. If you go for a higher resolution tree... Is this a higher resolution tree? Yeah, if you go for a higher resolution tree, they really look very nice. But of course, you want to pay attention to things like file size, and so whatever resolution of tree you pick is up to you. And let's drop that over there and do the same thing. Alright, now we have this little block of trees here. Oh, one more. But look at the size of this map. I make maps that are pretty big, and this will take me frickin' forever. So here's the way you cheat. I call this Kinko's Forestry. Just click, drag the whole thing, copy the whole block, and start doing this. And this is why, some of the line up in the road, it's fine, you can delete them later. This is why I was saying be careful of the tree density that you have. I've made this mistake before, and I will have to delete some of those. I've made this mistake before where I created this really dense block of trees, and then I wound up having to delete a ton of trees once I went through this operation. Now, you're still going to have to delete some of them, just because they're going to run into each other, or some areas where you want the trees thinner. That's okay. But less dense your tree field is that you base your copy on, the less sort of manual deleting you're going to have to do. And of course, if you make your tree field a lot less dense, you barely have to do any at all. I'll put a few more up here. Yeah, that's good enough. So now you have to, if you're picky, and of course if you've done this like I just have, you're going to have to go in and delete a bunch of trees. So I'll just do that and I'll speed it up a little bit. Alright, that's good enough for now. Now, a couple things to keep in mind. Obviously, you don't have to go through this much trouble if you don't want to. You can just use fewer trees. You can place fewer larger trees and get a pretty good effect. If you actually want your trees to be interactable with the players or have them blocking portions, don't place trees at all, and place them all when you go into Roll20 and use them as regular tokens. I just prefer this system because I think that these trees in general wind up looking better than things that I find through the graphic search at Roll20. So now we have a bunch of trees set up. Is there anything else that we need? Well, you know, not really a lot, because as I said before, I am going to grab a lot of my terrain devices like the bridge. There's a couple trees I forgot. Like the bridge, some protective emplacements that'll happen at these four corners. I'm going to grab all those and use them directly in Roll20, and that way, if I want to cheat later, I can take this map, once it's in Roll20, flip it, rotate it, do whatever I want, and have a reusable scene. So, let's see, is there anything else that we need to clean up? You know, I could spend a lot of time here and clean this map up, make it actually look good. Might slim out this river a little bit, but this video is not really about that. This video is just about how to get your ideas down in a workable format very quickly so you can get down to the all-important business of killing your player characters and making them cry. Let's just say that this is good enough, close enough for jazz, as we used to say, and we're going to export this map into a format that we can use. Exporting this map from Maptool is one of the wonky parts of the system. So here's how it works very quickly. Export, screenshot as. So this is the export screenshot window. We want the options to be as follows. We're going to take the entire map, and when it says entire map, Maptool determines this by the outermost edge of whatever you've drawn. So on this side of the map, it's going to extend out to the edge of this road, even though there's blank space. I know I'm going to crop this later. Up here, it'll extend to the top of this river, and so forth. So you can either trim this out now, or you can just wait until you get to Roll20 and resize it as you want. The layers, current view is fine. The GM view, and this is your file system. Here, you're going to enter the file name and the location of the PNG file that you're going to get. This is for publishing to an FTP site. I've never used it, so I can't really comment on it. I don't think it's that useful. And here's the advanced system. Buffered image simply takes the image that you have and tries to render it all at once using as much stack memory as it can allocate, which is why we increased the stack memory before. If your map is very complicated, has a lot of objects on it, sometimes you can forget about things. So the next option is image writer, and this writes it as a background process, which is a little bit slower. It can still screw up, but it's less likely to. This doesn't even work. Don't bother. We're going to try doing buffered image, but first I'm going to do something here, which I always forget to do. So the first thing I'm going to do, after I go to the object later and fill in some of these missing tree blocks, because I don't think this section looks very good. is I'm going to take one object on this map. Let's say it's this tree. I'm going to move it up here, and I'm going to resize it until it's about the correct size to fit inside a hex. You can do this with any object. If there's a campfire, I like using campfires for this. But the idea is that you get one object that you're going to look at later when you go to resize this map to tell whether or not you're correct. In this case, we're going to use this tree. The second thing I'm going to do is take off the grid. This is so that you don't have those lines, because if you try to export with the grid on, you will get those lines. Maybe you want that, maybe you don't. I personally do not. I would rather have the grids line up in Roll20. So let's go back to our export and see what happens. River map. And the first thing I'm going to try is using the buffered image. If the buffered image doesn't come out, I'm going to go to image writer. This is how you do it. So let's try the buffered image and see what happens. This is the part that's really scary, because once you do a lot of operations, all of a sudden most of your objects will disappear. If you move the map around, eventually they'll all come back. But I always think that means that I have a bug where I can't actually see the image. So let's go take a look and see what we got in the documents folder. Alright, this is river map in the documents folder, and as you can see, all the trees rendered out. Phew. We can zoom in, take a look at the details, see the details how we like it. Let's go get an idea of the scale. We'll go take a look at our reference object. That's about 1 hex. And at the scale that most players would be looking at, this looks pretty damn good. However, this file is over 10 megs. That's way too big. So now we're going to take this file and drop it into whatever image editor you like, and we're going to convert it to a usable format. So here we have the PNG file open. I'm just using Photoshop CS6. I happen to own it. I know how to use it. It doesn't matter what you use, as long as it has some different file format saves and compression settings. So here's one note about working with large files in Photoshop. It's always going to report a very large file size down here. That's because it's including metadata and whatnot. Never trust these readings or the readings you get in the Save for Web interface. They're almost always wrong. Simply save it as the file and then go take a look and explore and see how big it is. Let's open up the Save for Web dialog and get this warning. So here's the Save for Web interface. The first thing it opens up here is GIF, and GIF looks okay. You're a little limited in some of your colors, so if you're doing very detailed maps, you might not like the results. JPEG, everyone goes to JPEG as the standard for web graphics. I don't particularly like it. I get much better compression results of PNG 8. The only downside is, of course, that you're going to run into trouble with mobile browsers, which, honestly, on a map this big, you're going to run into trouble anyway. If you're very concerned about this, chop up your map into multiple sections and have them load individually, and you may get better results. But let's just go to PNG 8. So the PNG 8 map is almost lossless, pretty good detail, but with an image that's this big, you can see here, 7514 by 4738. Let's see what kind of compression we get. Well, mission accomplished. We've gone from almost 11 megs down to about 3.6 megs. We'll just call that good for now. You can play these compression settings as much as you want, depending on the package, whatever package you like to use, and get the result that you like. But let's take this and drop it into Roll20 and see what happens. So here I am on the splash page of my Roll20 campaign. I'm going to create a new map here. When you create a new page in Roll20 and you have a lot of maps like I do, it'll just wind up at the end. Do yourself a favor, drag it all the way back to where you think you're going to need it. It may take a while because this is a bit finicky. and do that. And the reason for that is when you take the player's ribbon and drag it over, you're not going to be able to do that and drag it all the way across. So you don't want to be dragging people to intermediate maps on your way to your target. So let's take a look at this. I'm not sure how big it's going to be, so give yourself some leeway here. I make it 120 by 120. I'm playing GURPS, so I'm going to set this to 1 meter, which is close enough to 1 yard for jazz. I'm going to use horizontal hexes. And let's go with that. We'll jump over here. So here we are. Let's go to the map layer, map and background. Zoom out a little bit just so we can see how big it's going to be. That might be big enough. Now import the map into your library like this. And it should be showing up right there. So here's something that I found out recently kind of works on Roll20. You can drag from your library directly to the map. Normally I would go and do a search for the word river map in here after I was done here. But these maps wind up a little bit small. That's okay. We're just going to resize it. Let's check our reference object, which is this tree up in the corner. And this tree is actually almost about the right size, so this could wind up working in our favor. You want to alt drag or change this to a drawing, whatever you like. And we'll drag it over here. Let's go take a look. It's still a little bit small. Let's keep dragging. And of course, if you have to, it looks like I'm going to have to resize my map. So let's make this 150 horizontally so I can drag it a little bit further. Alright, that's a little bit closer to what I want it to be. So let's zoom out a little bit. When you work with large maps with Roll20, at a certain point you will lose sight of your map as you change the zoom down very low. Just be aware of that. I'm going to have to trim some off of the bottom here and trim some off of the right side. So I'll just go back up in here and fiddle with these settings until you're happy. And that's about the right size. Let me just make sure that this measurement matches what's in my head for the width of the bridge. It does. Let's go take a look at this detail very quickly. Make sure we didn't lose anything. We didn't. This looks very good. It's going to look good at token scale, which is right about where I'm at right now. And from here, I'm just going to go searching for art assets on the web, or ones that I've created. I'm going to drop a bridge down here. I'm going to drop some reinforcements over here, maybe some supplies back here. Whatever I need in order to make this map work for my adventure. Now there are some other examples that I can show you about how you can get similar results on different scenarios. I'll do that now. So this is a kind of an underground scenario that's appropriate to dungeons or cave crawls or what have you. I've made all the non-visible layers black, and I do that to reduce the file size. It's very important that you do that. Over here we have a bunch of things I dropped in for scenery, a collapse section, a table. You know, they can move or destroy this table if they want. I could just drop that as a token, but I felt like putting it on the map. There's some rubble, little bits of scenery. Let's take a look at another one. This one represents a very large battle map that takes place at a stone quarry. And as you can tell, I've been playing a lot of Stronghold recently. That's why those look like that. They're a little out of place, but I like them. And there's not much detail here. All this stuff gets filled in Roll20. Let's just take a look at what that looks like once I've put all the icons down in Roll20. So this is the map on Roll20. This is actually after the battle took place. As you can see, I dropped in some towers, some tents, some cookpots, fires, and a lot of these things have been moved around as the players have manipulated the environment. It's unlikely that I would use this map for anything else again, but I wanted to keep that option. And that's what happened when the players attacked it. So, I hope you enjoyed this little video, and I hope it helps you make maps that don't look terrible, even if you can't draw like me, and without spending a whole ton of time. Thanks for watching.